Hello, you are watching or listening to Lobotomy World. I am Jen Ives. I hope you're doing all right. Now, it's been a pretty crazy week, hasn't it, news-wise? I'll be honest, I was thinking about, what am I going to do the podcast about this week? Because, I want to do this podcast every single gosh darn week. And I've been pretty gosh darn good about it up to now. But I'll be honest, this week it's been a bit of a challenge because, obviously, as you probably know, unless you've been living under a rock, like some sort of rock-dwelling fish, a rockfish or whatever they call it, you'd know that the conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was assassinated quite dramatically, actually. He was assassinated while giving a debate at a Utah university. A gunman, apparently a lone gunman, on the roof of an adjacent building, shot him right as he was giving an answer, hitting him in the neck. He bled out and he died I believe very shortly afterwards. So that has very much been the main thing in the news cycle. Like, everybody's talking about that. Everybody's posting about it. It's taken up all of the airspace everywhere. All over the TV, the internet. And so I'm thinking to myself, what am I... what should I do an episode about Charlie Kirk? And then I was thinking, would that just be adding to the noise? Because it's pretty gosh darn noisy right now. Does anybody really need my perspective on this whole tragedy? But then I thought, they absolutely do, because I've got some... oh my God, I got some real original hot takes coming. No, of course not, But, to be fair to me, this has very much been the focus of the entire world, not the entire world, but a lot of the world, for the last 2 or 3 days. So, I don't have anything else to talk about. Nothing else has happened to me. I mean, I could talk about, I could talk about I went to a cafe today, had a piece of cake. Haven't had cake in a while. It was carrot cake. It was absolutely flipping delicious. Okay, that is interesting, obviously. But is it as interesting as civil war? Is it as interesting as social upheaval? Left against right? Boys against girls? Dogs against cats? The binaries are in full force at the moment, everybody. I was going to say ladies and gentlemen, but then I'll just be contributing to that, wouldn't I? Look, I'm going to say off the bat, I'm going to get it out of the way up front, just so nobody can misconstrue me going forward. I think, and this is a very edgy thing to say, so hold on to your undergarments. It is my belief that it's bad to shoot someone with a gun. In pretty much almost, not every single circumstance, but most circumstances, it's bad to do that. If you're on a film set and the gun in question is a replica gun, a prop gun that shoots squibs, and I know you don't shoot a squib technically. A squib is it's like a little thing that pops on the costume, but you know what I mean. I'm saying if it's a fake gun, then you can shoot that at each other. If it's a paintball gun or a BB gun, go nuts. A water gun. But real guns, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of them, really. I mean, like, if I'm playing a video game, a violent video game, I'll obviously use a gun. I'm not playing Grand Theft Auto on compassionate mode. But I want to just get it up front because, you know, there's a lot of weird social discord happening right now. It's true, you know. The right are very upset because Charlie Kirk, if you don't know, was a right-wing commentator. He had this thing where he would basically go to universities. And I'm explaining this to you, you know, in case you just somehow don't know this, but not everybody might know. He used to go to universities, and he was in his 30s, he was in his early 30s. He'd go to these universities and he'd be like, debate me, bro. He'd be like, I think trans people are dumb and ugly. Debate me, bro. And then everyone would come there, and like there'd be some people wearing MAGA hats, but then there'd be some people who are like, I don't know, compassionate leftists, and they'd be like, yeah, I am going to debate you. And then he'd be like, well, you're 19. And then they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm 19. I don't really know anything yet about the world. You have a whole sort of like 11 or 12 years of experience in debating on me. And then he'd like upload it to the internet like, Charlie Kirk absolutely pones blue-haired tranny freak. It was that kind of thing, you know, not in those exact words, but that was very much the vibe. That being said, you know, nobody deserves to be shot and killed. And the right wing are, you know, they're upset about it. They're grieving one of their knights of the round. They're grieving him because, you know, he was successful at what he did. He started Turning Point USA, a much wider organisation with other people involved that is dedicated to spreading conservative right-wing values, okay? And what I mean by that, again, is making fun of the libs. It's a bit like libs of TikTok, it's that sort of vibe. But you can't argue he was good at what he did, you know. He was a successful shit stirrer, I guess. And as I say, that's no excuse. I'm not saying he should be executed, okay? It's not something that I believe in. I don't believe in it. I don't think anybody should be killed. Trump was calling for this guy, the shooter. There was a shooter, they found him. He was calling for him to be executed, capital punishment style, biblical style. And I obviously disagree with that too. But the Conservatives, they're very rattled up about this, you know. They see this as an affront to free speech. They see this as the left being out of control. Although no one actually knows as of yet if the shooter was left-wing. In fact, they looked at his voting record. And as far as I can tell, he was registered, but he wasn't affiliated with any particular party. I think he was independent, so. But one of the weirdest things about this whole awfulness, and it is awful, you know, I'd say it's awful on the level that I feel sorry for a lot of the young people in the audience who had to witness their first assassination in person. You know, that's a traumatic thing to have to go through. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I've never seen anybody get shot in person. I've never seen anybody get assassinated in front of me. And I can imagine that is horrendous. Obviously, Charlie Kirk's wife and kids are going to be feeling it pretty bad right now. And I'm not afraid to say it. You know, I think this guy that shot Charlie Kirk, I think he's probably a loser, you know? That's what I think. We'll go into it a little bit more later, but from what I can ascertain through my own intelligence networks, i.e. like looking at Google and going on my X burner account to like see what people are saying. What I can ascertain is that he was what I would have expected him to be, which is a 4chan using Groyper-esque basement boy. And it so often seems to be that. You know, that is, to me, that's pretty well established. The sort of Pepe, the Frog, Nick Fuentes archetype. You know, that seems to me to be pretty established in the American law of the vigilante assassin / school shooter. You know, that's we see that time and time again. But strangely, and this is I think this is quite odd, when this happened, one of the first things we saw was speculation that this shooter must be trans. They're trans. They're a transsexual. There's another tranny on the loose. We've got to stop selling guns to trans people. We've got to lock trans people up. And it's like, why? Why are we saying this? Why are we alluding? Why do we think that this shooter is trans? And as far as I can see, the only reason initially why they thought that the shooter might be trans, like at the beginning, was because there was a rumour going around that some of the shell casings had engraved on them some pro-trans ideology. Which, firstly, what would that be? You know, and you know, I'm not. People go on a lot about pro-trans ideology. I think when people engrave things on a bullet, it's probably just like a joke. You know, a weird, horrible little gag that they're doing, or a misdirect, a red herring kind of thing. I don't get the impression that like the things they care about gets engraved on the bullet, you know. What do I know though? I've never been in the mafia. I used to think that bullet engraving was like a professional thing. Like I thought it was like, oh, we'll take the bullet to the engravers and they'll engrave something on the bullet and then we'll shoot it. Like, you know, when iPods were really popular, you used to be able to engrave your iPod if you wanted. If you're going to get an iPod as a gift, or you just really liked your iPod, you could have your name engraved on it, or you could have like a little statement on it, like, believe in yourself. So that's really what I honestly thought this bullet engraving they were talking about. That's what I thought it was. So imagine my face when I come to find that actually this bullet engraving is a very loose term. It's like they scratch it on with a knife. So I feel pretty stupid, as you can probably imagine. But was it pro-trans ideology on the bullets? No, it was not. It was just nonsense. It was 4chan Groyper nonsense. So to sort of go into this a little bit, to kind of give you an example, I'm going to show you a video of Megyn Kelly. She opened her show with this, and this was early on in the reporting of the Charlie Kirk assassination. So she's not the most liberal person, I'll tell you that much. But she's been around a while. I believe she used to be on Fox News, right? Is she a Fox News one? I'm pretty sure she was that. There was a movie about her called Terminator 7. No, I don't know what it was called. I can't remember. But now she's on Sirius XM, which is interesting. Isn't Sirius XM owned by a trans woman? I'm pretty sure that's true. Hold on. Sirius XM trans creator? Is that a thing? The founder of Sirius XM is Martine Rothblatt, a trans woman, entrepreneur, lawyer, author, and pioneer in satellite communications. Okay, that's worth knowing, isn't it? That the founder of Sirius XM itself is a trans woman. So I wonder what she would have to think about what Megyn Kelly is about to allude to.
What we know right now about motive. Charlie Kirk's killer engraved the ammunition used to murder him with pro-transgender ideology.
He engraved it with pro-transgender ideology? Oh my God, what was it?
According to reporting in multiple outlets, to the surprise of literally no one.
What do you mean, to the surprise of no one? I like the way that she's just insinuating that, like, obviously, these killers, these deranged murderers that we have like loads of, they're all getting in on the pro-trans ideology. In fact, killing people is a part of the transgender process. What you do is, when you're transgender, right, you come out to your parents and then they go, oh no, and then you come out to a doctor, you tell the doctor that you want to start transitioning, and you have some psychological evaluations. Sometimes they can last for years, these bloody I had to have 20 weeks before they figured out that I wasn't actually nuts, so, well, although I am a bit quirky. And then I was eventually allowed to then go on to hormone replacement therapy. So some trans people will then go on to have gender-affirming surgeries. And then they kind of sit around, they go, oh, but now what? You know, I've completed my transition. I don't know what else to do. And they don't know that there's actually another chapter in the legal requirements, which is that you have to get a gun and you have to kill a public figure. And only then are you allowed to live as a woman and with dignity. Doesn't seem that credible to me. I don't know about that. No one told me.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I have more to report to you, okay? But I just have to pause here. Of course, that's the first thing I thought yesterday. I'm sure it ran through a lot of the minds of you watching this program as we did it live. Stephen was outspoken. Sorry, not Stephen. Charlie was outspoken on...
That's a bit of a telling slip, isn't it? She got mixed up, I assume, between Charlie Kirk and Steven Crowder. Hoping for something, are we, Megan? That seems inappropriate. Leave Steven Crowder alone. He didn't do anything bad, did he? He was just very nasty to his wife. Very nasty to his pregnant wife. And other things.
On the trans issue and many issues. But there's one particular group that's...
I just want to say, this is like immediately, this is like very soon after finding out the news, and it's like, wow, you're just going to go straight to the trans stuff like that. Like, even if he did have quote unquote pro-trans ideology in a manifesto or on his bullets or whatever, that doesn't mean that trans people did anything wrong. That just means some cuckoo bananas guy like wanted to create a scapegoat. Like, but also, like, it's not even true. It's not even true.
Been running around killing Americans in the name of transgender ideology lately, and it's...
I'm just going to take that back a little bit, because I really just want you to hear that clean.
Many issues, but there's one particular group that's been running around killing Americans in the name of transgender ideology lately, and it's transgender activists or individuals or those who proclaim that they are.
Is that true? There's one group. Wait, let's just hold on. I just want to go back a little bit and just break that down a little bit as she says it, because I think it's worth doing. You know, I just want to be sure that what she's saying is what I'm hearing.
Charlie was outspoken on the trans issue, and many...
Charlie Kirk was outspoken on the trans issue, correct. He wasn't a fan, really. He wasn't a fan. You know, he was very traditional family values guy. And yes, you know, you don't deserve to be assassinated for saying that, but let's just be real, he wasn't a big fan of trans people, okay?
Many issues, but there's one particular group that's been running around killing Americans.
There's one particular group who's been running around killing Americans. Okay, that's interesting. One particular group running around specifically killing Americans. So a particular group that hates Americans. Okay, who is it, Megan?
In the name of transgender ideology lately, and
they're doing it in the name of transgender ideology. I haven't heard about this. I know there was that one school shooter, although they didn't do it for transgender ideology, did they? They were like a 4chan weirdo again. They were like really racist. That was like their whole thing. But okay, you're saying that there's a group killing Americans in the name of transgender ideology. In my name? I don't agree with this. Who's this group?
Transgender activists.
Oh no, it's me. People say I'm a transgender activist because I'm a transgender person who speaks their mind. I'm a trans activist. So, oh no, I must also be a killer.
Or individuals, or those who proclaim that they are.
So that's everyone then. Everyone's covered. No one's safe. Megan, I tell you what. Bloody hell, someone's started mowing their lawn. I'll tell you what. It feels, to me, with this take, it feels like Megyn Kelly has a gun, a machine gun, because she's just spraying ideas around like anyone's business. I mean, how can this be legal? How can it be legal to spread this kind of insane misinformation? Like, I don't know hardly anything, okay? I believe in that sort of that Socratic idea, right? I think it was I believe it was Socrates who said, I don't really know anything. I actually don't really know nothing. I'll tell you what, Plato, I don't know anything, you know? I'm dumb. That's kind of what he was saying. And but Megyn Kelly's approach, and a lot of these right-wing weirdos, their approach is just like, oh no, I do know. Actually, I've got it all figured out. Before we even know who the shooter is, I know who did this. It was the trannies, actually.
Doesn't mean they're all murderous.
Oh, thank God. I'm glad she clarified that, because for a minute there, I thought she meant all trans people were murderous. And I was going to turn myself in case I committed a future crime, like in Minority Report starring Tom Cruise.
But there's a particularly high percentage committing crimes these days.
Oh, okay. There's a particularly high percentage. I wonder why that is. Is it because trans people have like a special innate gene that makes them more insane and criminal and violent? I have no criminal record, by the way. I don't think this kind of reporting is particularly useful. I think there's a lot of right-wing people here pointing the finger and saying, hey, because you lefties called Charlie Kirk a fascist and alluded to him being a bad guy, you're to blame for this. You've got blood on your hands. But then you got people like Megyn Kelly coming out just straight up spreading misinformation and clearly trying to stir up divisions that really shouldn't be there.
And it is responsible and important to say so, which is what Charlie was doing. The thought that this was a person acting to avenge some sort of trans person or objecting to Charlie's stance on...
Yeah, the killer, apparently, he was avenging a trans person. No, he wasn't. There's no evidence for that. We haven't even had an interview with him. There's nothing that says he was avenging a trans person. It's wild that Megyn Kelly can just lie like this or allude to things that are just complete works of fantasy in her own head. And we're the ones who are being called unstable and mentally ill. Like, this woman's fighting off demons here. And she looks like she's in hell with that backdrop. Look, what is that backdrop? That's the demon flames of hell. I don't trust that. She's in line with the devil. Megyn Kelly is in line with Satan.
on the trans issue is entirely chilling to me, because when Charlie and I first became friends, this was an issue he wasn't even talking about that much, but he was seeing.
All right, I've had enough of Megyn Kelly. She's annoying me now. I'm getting upset about Megyn Kelly. This is annoying me. So why are trans people being blamed for this? Could it be that there's sort of like a strange, mean, pre-planned agenda to smear trans people and make us all look crazy, which might then excuse oppression later down the line? I don't know. I'm not conspiratorially minded, but I actually am becoming more and more conspiratorially minded. I don't agree. I think nah, can't be. But I found this article. It's by New Republic, and it says MAGA is already blaming trans people for Charlie Kirk's death, and this was posted on September 11th at 5:49. So that's a day after the shooting, when we found out that he died on the day, but then, you know, the operation to find the shooter was over a kind of 48-hour period. But this was the day after, so this is what everyone was talking about when they should have been remembering 9/11, the original tragedy. This one, it's weird when there's two tragedies on the calendar, right, one after the other. I mean, it's like bingo. It's like sooner or later in America, they're going to have a full bingo card, and that's that. You know, I'm not hoping for that. I'm just saying, I don't know. It feels like that's the way it's going. You got to chill out over there. Anyway, this article says, MAGA conservatives are leveraging Charlie Kirk's death to advance their transphobic policies. That doesn't surprise me. They haven't stopped doing that kind of thing in a really long time. A bulletin circulated among law enforcement officials Thursday described the weapons used by Kirk's killer, stating that there were symbols on rifle ammunition that expressed, quote, transgender and anti-fascist ideology, according to the Wall Street Journal. But that unverified description may have been completely incorrect. So this is the Wall Street Journal, then, that started this spreading of misinformation, right? And I believe the Wall Street Journal has come out now and kind of said, maybe we didn't quite get it right on that one. Well, thank God you did that before someone else got hurt, you know? Like, there are people walking around right now, mostly old people, but some terrible young people who think now that being trans means you own a rifle and that you're going to assassinate somebody. A senior law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the investigation cautioned that the report had not been verified by ATF analysts, did not match other summaries of the evidence, and might turn out to have been misread or misinterpreted, reported the New York Times. Those kinds of early status reports are usually not made public due to their low reliability, mixing together accurate and inaccurate information in order to give officers a breadth of material to work with in the early stages of an investigation. So it's great that organisations and commentators like Stephen Crowder and The Quartering and all these kind of freaks, it's really great that they kind of just jumped on this and shared this, and that's really responsible. Still, that hasn't stopped some far-right personalities from deliberately targeting and wishing the worst for an already disenfranchised and vulnerable demographic. That's not me, that's this saying this, but I do agree. So this is a quote from a person on X, a user. They said, if the person who killed Charlie Kirk was a transgender, there can be no mercy for that species any longer. We're not a species. We're just a variant, really. We're still the same species. Wrote far-right podcast bro Joey Manorino, who has more than 631,000 followers on X. Oh, okay, I thought this was just some anonymous user, but this is Oh, it's Joey Manorino. I've never heard of Joey Manorino. Let's take a look. Who is this guy? Okay, he looks a little bit like Elliot Rodgers. He's got the Elliot Rodgers of him, sort of smushed with I don't know, what would you say? Dracula. It is me, Dracula. I don't really know much about this guy.
The minute he gets out, you have bombs going off all over the Middle East. You have Russia going into Ukraine. You have Ukraine acting like they can't stop the war. They have to keep...
Okay, so he's just one of these, like, MAGA freaks. Okay. In another post, Manorino claimed that, quote, transgender terrorism is a true problem in America, and until we properly address it, we cannot have a peaceful nation. That's right, it's transgender terrorism that is to blame for this. It's not America's rich, varied history of gun violence, of brutal slayings and killings and murders and all kinds of horrible things that centre around the ownership of guns. It couldn't be. It's transgenders. It's Laverne Cox. I saw Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black, and I could see why she was in prison, because, I mean, listen, these transgender people, they're killing people left, right and centre, and you're like, well, actually, that's just a character she's playing. She's not actually in jail. Yeah, well, Joey Manorino said... Oh, this is nice. This is a nice quote. So apparently this Joey Manorino character, he said, "The Second Amendment applies to people, not science experiments," he added. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. That is funny. That is funny. I mean, listen, I know I shouldn't laugh at that. I've never been called a science experiment before, and I guess, in a way, trans people sort of are. I mean, I'm not saying that we are science experiments. I'm not saying that we're not people. We are people. People can also be science experiments, but, you know, we are at the vanguard of human perfection. So, I don't know. Let's take a look at this Joey Manorino again. I mean, he would know, wouldn't he? This Dracula-ass looking dude. That caught me off guard there. That's quite funny. In yet another post on Thursday, Manorino said that 2 weeks ago, I called for transgenders to be rounded up, detained and studied due to their propensity for mass murder. I don't know what more needs to happen for that suggestion to be taken seriously, he said. Again, no evidence to suggest that the shooter was trans. They weren't a trans woman. They weren't a trans man. They just... I mean, there was no pro-trans thing on the bullet casing. This is all just a complete fabrication in the heads of the right wing. So, Joey Manorino, let's take a look at this guy. So, Joey Manorino. My grief has already turned to rage. We cannot forget this feeling. We must harness this energy and take the entire West back. Okay, this is a good point to talk about this. I genuinely think that a lot of this Charlie Kirk stuff, and again, we've already established at the top, him getting killed, bad, undeserved. Okay, no one should be assassinated. Okay, I'm not pro-assassination, but I think it's quite telling how many people, how many right-wing or, you know, right-leaning conservative blowhards. It's interesting how many of them are using this as an opportunity to stoke the fires of an even more divisive culture war verging on civil war. Like, these people, they're really not being shy about the fact that apparently this moment, this Charlie Kirk moment, is a line in the sand that has been crossed. You know, the line's been crossed, and now they can't, you know, these right-wingers, they can't be blamed for what comes next, you know? That's the implication. Hey, you forced our hands. Who did? This one guy who made a terrible decision. This one guy who clearly has something wrong with him and decided to go out and kill a person. This 22-year-old guy. He doesn't represent me. And I reject the assumption, actually. I take umbrage with the assumption of that. I don't know what character that is, but... and he's not the only one, Joey Manorino. I've been seeing this an awful lot, this perspective. I'll show you something else that I found. One sec.
In life, Charlie Kirk spent his time politely inviting and debating with those that didn't agree with him. And there's no doubt that he opened the eyes.
So I'm gonna call bullshit on that for a second. I wouldn't say that Charlie Kirk spent his life politely debating people.
And the minds of millions of young Americans. Back in the day, this was called debate. In 2025, the hard left and the liberal elitists, and I include the media in that, have turned people like Charlie into phony modern-day Nazis and fascists.
So I'm very distrusting of this narrative, This idea that, the left has been far too fast and loose with its accusation of who's a fascist and who's this and who's that, and everyone's confused now, so people are just shooting anyone. Sometimes it's important, I would argue, to point out fascist behaviour and fascist point of views where and when they emerge. If we're not allowed to say that Charlie Kirk was a dick, okay, I don't know where we stand. Because I know this is going to be controversial, and I don't care. He was a dick. I did not like Charlie Kirk. I've already said twice already, doesn't deserve to die. I would never say that. I think what happened to him is objectively awful and horrible. But I don't have to like him, and I didn't. And I believe that the things that he said were fascist. They were bordering on fascism. I think that Charlie Kirk's life work, I think his agenda was to marginalise, to other, to make smaller people in my community. And I guess I just don't appreciate this sort of gaslighting that's going on. And I'll be honest, it's an impressive gaslighting. It's good gaslighting. I've seen some gaslighting in my time, but these ultra-sensitive conservatives at the moment who are like, the left did this because they called someone a fascist. It's like, how are you making this add up? Like, what are these mental gymnastics that you're doing to get here? It's very concerning to me.
Who must be silenced at all costs. But the monster who pulled that trigger doesn't realise the ramifications of what they've done. Charlie's words and Charlie's life has now been immortalised, and the Christian faith, the free world.
Okay, so that has what to do with me? I find it really strange, actually, that a lot of these right-wing commentators are pretending, in my opinion, to be so disgusted and so outraged by, some of the inappropriate dark memes and, they call it celebrations of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And listen, I'm not here to endorse those things. I'm not here to encourage them. My instinct when this first happened was like, I'm just going to, lay back, lay low, see what's going on, try to understand the situation. But some people, they're very, very quick to be like, content. Everyone's like content brain now. It's like, I've got to go, let's make a funny meme and throw it out there. So you don't have to do that all the time. Sometimes you can just let a bad thing be a bad thing. And we don't all have to contribute all the time. I know there's a certain irony of saying that as I'm making a podcast about it. But the only reason I'm making this episode is because I'm getting frustrated with this narrative that is being pushed about how the left brought this on themselves, you know, we've got blood on our hands and all this nonsense. It's like, these are the same people that constantly argue this point that, like, it's not just two parties, you know, we're all different, we've all got different points of view. That's why we need debate, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but when something like this happens, a crime committed by a 22-year-old white, Latter-day Saints Christian raised kid, essentially, like in America, this guy has only been allowed to legally drink for a year, okay? He's been allowed to own a gun for the past 20 years. I think you get your first rifle when you're 1 year old in the States. But we're supposed to just, like, tolerate this absolute barefaced lie that the left as an amorphous entity has anything to do with this. Like, I'm an individual just like you're an individual. I have my own points of view on all of this. I understand that people are sensitive right now and people are grieving, but it does fall under the remit of this free speech thing that you are kind of going on about quite a lot. This thing that Charlie Kirk was apparently an ambassador for, the king of. And I think it's worth stating that the climate that we currently live in, the climate under Trump, I guess I live under it by proxy. But, like, if you're watching this and you're American, the climate that you live in, you now live in a climate that is... You live in a climate where being a piece of shit is not only the norm, it is encouraged, okay? Your president is a piece of shit. Your president is one of the most underhanded, cruel, petty men ever. You know, the way he speaks about his rivals, his opponents, the way he enacts laws that are draconian and seemingly based as, like, punishments for things that he doesn't agree with, his tyrannical reign. Like, we're living in an era where it is fashionable again to be a piece of shit. And it's no surprise that someone who is as emblematic of the 80s as Donald Trump, it's no surprise that it would take someone like him in the White House to bring about that. So let's be careful about the rocks that we're throwing, about the big mean liberals doing their jokes that can never be forgiven. Really? I thought it was just comedy, bro. I thought comedy was back, bro. And yes, it's inappropriate. Yes, it's poor taste. Would I do it? Probably not. Not publicly, anyway. But it is a monumental feat of gaslighting and crybullying to be like, now you're doing it, we don't like it. It's like, well, Charlie Kirk built his reputation. Charlie Kirk was antagonistic. I don't understand this strange rewriting of history, that he was this compassionate, free-thinking angel.
The conservative activist and Trump ally was shot moments after answering a question about trans school shooters. Videos circulating online show an attendee asking Kirk, "Do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years? To which he responds with, "Too many." A study from the Violence Prevention Project found that less than 1% of school shootings in the U.S. were carried out by transgender individuals. But where did Charlie Kirk stand on LGBTQ+ issues? At the age of 18, he formed Turning Point USA, a conservative activist group known for his series of Prove Me Wrong debates, recorded live at left-leaning universities across the U.S., at which LGBTQ+ issues would often be discussed.
Puberty is not the problem. Puberty is the solution to the trans issue.
Charlie would often debate queer college students on the topic of being transgender, making his stance explicitly clear.
You're lying to yourself and lying to other people that you could become something other than what you are born.
He has also been vocal about his disagreement with same-sex marriage.
I believe marriage is between one man and one woman.
Charlie's views extended to LGBTQ+ rights.
We must ban trans-affirming care the entire country. I think that monogamous heterosexual marriage should be a prerequisite to adoption.
Here's what I think ultimately about this rewriting of history when it comes to Charlie Kirk is a lot of people right now are calling him a free speech absolutist, you know, as if that was his main thing that he cared about. I don't think that's true. Based on what I've seen of Charlie Kirk over the years, I much more get the impression that he's like that guy that was on Jubilee who admitted to being a fascist. It's funny that we're forgetting this moment, actually, now that everybody's saying, you know, you pointed the finger and called everybody a fascist, and now look what's happened. Well, some of you guys were outwardly saying you were fascists. So you were self-identifying as fascists. So, you know, what am I supposed to make of that? But like that guy, whoever it was at the Jubilee, you know the Jubilee video I'm talking about, he said that he believed in freedom of speech, but only specifically his freedom of speech. And he said that he believed that when his beliefs became into power, then they would get rid of the First Amendment. So the First Amendment was only being used as a means to an end, because listen, a lot of Charlie Kirk's ideology, a lot of the things that Charlie Kirk was platforming for, they would mean lesser rights for people like me. It would mean lesser rights for various minorities in America. It would prioritize straight, white men. A lot of the things that Charlie Kirk was fighting for didn't really have much difference when compared to The Handmaid's Tale, you know? And for that reason, I find it very, very difficult to access the same level of sympathy and sadness that some of these more conservative cultural commentators do. Now, there have, and listen, again, that doesn't mean that I wish death upon him. I think that's awful. I don't like to see people die. I like to see people grow and change. But you can't expect somebody who has been negatively affected by the rhetoric and the propaganda of somebody to then, you know, get the Kleenex out when they're no longer around. This is the thing. Emotions are complicated, and you can have lots of different emotions at once. And the emotions that I have around this, I guess, are, and this is me being completely 100% honest, not bothered, really. Now, obviously, not every trans person is like me. You know, I'm pretty unique. I'm not really. I think I'm just like a normal trans person, in the sense that, like, I don't like what Charlie Kirk stood for. I don't think that he deserved to die. I don't like seeing public executions. Although Charlie Kirk did call for public executions. And there's a profound irony in that, but I don't think still that is a justification. I think I have a pretty healthy, normal perspective on this. I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I have never met Charlie Kirk, never debated Charlie Kirk. I wasn't there when Charlie Kirk was killed. No personal relationship to Charlie Kirk. So for that reason, I don't think it's unreasonable for me to say that ultimately it doesn't really affect me that much. Like, when my granddad died, I was quite upset. When my mum died, I was quite upset. I was very upset. It's not nice when that happens. When my hamster died, I was very upset. I was a lot younger then. But when Charlie Kirk died, I did not feel the same way. I thought it was sad. I thought it was unfortunate. But I also thought, well, you know, I didn't like him very much. He didn't have some kind things to say about me and my community. Sorry if that's, you know, shocking. Personally, I think that's quite tame. in comparison to some of the things I've been seen said about my community. But I'm not representative of all trans people. So I found a few trans people, some videos of trans people speaking positively, I guess, about Charlie Kirk and grieving Charlie Kirk. So we're going to watch these.
And a local transgender woman is rallying for unity amidst high tension surrounding Kirk's murder.
A local transgender woman is causing a stir by doing a funny dance.
She was not a supporter. She's encouraging others to look past the political divide in America and instead choose peace. Fox 11's Gina Silva, she's live with the interview you'll see only on Fox 11.
That's right. For Gigi Gandhi, some of the online reaction has been deeply unsettling.
Did they have to record this in a literal airport? Like, why would you choose to record it there?
She worries that some of the hateful posts celebrating Charlie Kirk's death could turn into real violence against her community.
Well, here's the thing. Yes, that is a concern. You know, I do think that there is a amalgamation of ill feelings that happens when people are sharing things online. However, I would argue that it is possible, and I know we're kind of getting into a chicken and egg situation here, but I do actually think that there was a fair amount of trans hatred, i.e. hatred towards trans people, before this whole Charlie Kirk thing. Like, before Charlie Kirk died and people started posting mean things on the internet about it, I think trans people were kind of in a shit situation already, and I don't think we ever asked for that, actually. I think the deck was pretty stacked from the beginning.
Whoever did it, I just want to say thank you so much.
I think it's honestly disturbing. And
Gigi Gandhi was never a fan of Charlie Kirk. As a transgender woman, she often found his comments hurtful. Yet in her opinion, he was speaking a direct truth.
Okay, so this frustrates me, right? Because it's not about that he was hurtful. Oh, he said hurtful things. He said hurtful things, but, you know, oh, he was speaking his truth. It's like, no. He was, as I said, he was very effective, and he was shifting the culture in a way for a lot of young white men, predominantly, towards very, very dangerous outlooks. Very, very horrible, exclusionary, unhelpful points of view. And it's funny, right, because people are saying, oh, you called him a fascist and that's what encouraged this shooter, probably. But then we could say, oh, but Charlie Kirk was spreading loads of misinformation and loads of quite hateful perspectives on the transgender community. So does that mean that we can then blame him for every trans death that happens? Every trans suicide, every trans murder that happens in a year in America, like, that's Charlie Kirk's fault because somebody would have heard Charlie Kirk speak about trans people in a negative way and been like, oh, I should harm a trans person. Well, no, we don't really make a habit of making such broad accusations as that, because we tend to understand that, you know, it takes more than one person to kind of like be responsible for these kind of things. I didn't dislike Charlie Kirk because he was mean and made me hurt my feelings. I dislike Charlie Kirk because I genuinely think he was a propagandist ghoul. So, like, yeah, rest in peace is sad whenever anyone dies. But just because they died doesn't mean that I'm going to change my mind on that. That's how I feel about it. And I resent the idea that I shouldn't feel that way. And that the fact that I do feel that way is a bad thing. It says something about my moral character. I don't think it says anything particularly bad about my moral character. I think all it says is that my moral character is consistent. You know, the fact that I don't flip-flop and break down into tears when a right-wing conservative hate monger dies. I mean, I personally wouldn't trust someone claiming to be liberal who then does that. Here's the thing. I believe in free speech. I love the idea of free speech. I think it's great. You know, yeah, say what you want. Great. But the thing is that a lot of debate culture, a lot of, you know, I'm sitting in a tent, change my mind, you know, prove me wrong. Let's not pretend that that is something useful and helpful for society. No one's coming away from any of that going, oh yeah, Charlie Kirk really changed my mind on that one actually. That's not what that is. A good debate should be moderated. Moderation is an important part of debate, you know, a neutral party who can kind of assign points based on factual and relevancy and, you know, all this kind of things. What they actually are, these debates, are an opportunity to try and get a clip of someone looking or saying something dumb to post online and spread more misinformation, hate and propaganda. It is part of a propaganda machine. And I don't believe that, you know, these right-wing conservative commentators, I don't believe that they don't know this. I'm one of these people that I'm not of the belief that the right is stupid. You know, I think we've moved on a lot from that kind of perspective. You know, the whole George W. Bush 9/11 era kind of like, oh, he's so dumb, ha. Like, no. A lot of the right wing are very smart people that in a kind of like Machiavellian evil way. They know what they're doing and they do it well. And we need to be more savvy to it, because that's one of the things that's happening now. There's a kind of twisting that's going on. One thing that the right loves to do, and if you haven't read Doppelganger by Naomi Klein, I massively recommend it, and it's something that she goes into a little bit in that book, which is the way in which the right co-opt language and movements from the left, twist them, distort them, and then serve them back to us in a kind of Kafkaesque way that we don't really know how to react to. And that's happening now. That's happening right now with all this, like, how dare you? You know, have you no decency? But I don't know, I just think there's so much irony going on here. It's hard not to address it. I probably shouldn't be addressing it, but like, I don't know, I just feel like, I guess the best way to describe it is that I feel like I'm being gaslit here on a monumental level. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, Conservatives are still very much in power. The outcome for this young person who committed this heinous crime is going to be very bleak, I think. They're already pushing... Trump's already pushing for the death penalty for him, so... And people are martyring Charlie Kirk, and at the end of the day, that's all it's about, really. And Trump, listen, he's already moved on. You know, from what I saw, he's already not that bothered about Charlie Kirk anymore. I mean, look at this video. So it'll be difficult to hear because, yet again, this news outlet has chosen to interview Trump under a helicopter. I don't know why they always interview him under a helicopter, so it's barely audible, but I'll kind of translate for you, so...
I think very good, and by the way...
So the reporter said, Mr. Trump, how have you been holding up over the past day and a half in reference to he said, how have you been holding up in the past day and a half with the death of your friend Charlie Kirk, okay? That's the gist of what he says to him. And then Trump says in response, this.
I think very good, and by the way, right there, you see all...
Very good, holding up very well.
The Trump They just started construction of the new
And as you'll see over there, you know, the truck, they've just started construction.
ballroom for the White House.
All over the White House. So it's like, this reporter's probably thinking like, no, I know it's noisy, but I asked you about Charlie Kirk. You know, your friend who died, got shot in the neck. I wasn't asking about how the decorating's going, how the renovation's going on the White House. The big gold toilet you're installing or whatever.
Which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty. It'll be an absolutely magnificent structure. And I just see all the trucks. We just started, so it'll get done very nicely, and it'll be one of the best anywhere in the world, actually. Thank you so much.
I love the way the reporter's like, thank you so much. Thanks for talking to me. And they're not like, what? That's not what I asked you. He's doing that thing, I think, where, I mean, listen, either he's completely callous and has completely moved on from Charlie Kirk, or I give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the helicopters are too loud and he genuinely didn't hear what the reporter asked him. But he's doing that thing where you like nod and pretend, which I used to do a lot at school. So I recognize that.
Chris Ruckert is with us as well. Chris, if you're there, the information that President Trump just gave us, that someone very...
Why is she dressed like Kermit the Frog? I feel like we should at least address this, that she is dressed like Kermit the Frog. And listen, I love Kermit the Frog. But that colour, you know, when she chose that, was she intentionally like, I want to give big Kermit vibes? Because, girl, you're giving big Kermit vibes, big Kermit energy.
Everybody did a great job. You know, getting somebody that you start off with absolutely nothing. And we started off with a clip that made him look like an ant. Mm-hmm. That was almost useless. We just saw there was somebody up there.
Hold on a minute. Listen, I'm sure they helped, and I'm sure they tried their best to catch him, but so like the dad turned him in. This shooter, his dad recognized him from the video and encouraged him to turn himself in. So I don't know why they're saying we got him. Like, no, like the family did it. I'm not going to give you much credit for it.
And so much work has been done over the last 2.5 days. You know, it's
pointless work then.
Amazing, actually, when you start off with that and then all of a sudden you get lucky or talent or whatever it is. But yeah, I think we're in great shape.
Mr. President,
he's in custody.
Your suspicion was that he was radical left, and now you have more information. What can you share with us about his ideology?
Yeah, Lawrence, let me just... And by the way, Lawrence is doing a good job. What's going on?
Fantastic job, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
I said you were...
What's happening here? I must be missing something. Who's Lars? And like... Do you see the way he slapped his leg there? What's going on?
Going to do well. Yeah, I think that I don't want to go too far. I'd like to tell you some stories at how it happened, but essentially somebody that was very close to him turned him in. And that happens when you had some of those good shots. Somebody is...
Okay, so he didn't answer his question at all. That was a complete diversion. This guy, Lars, whatever his name is, asked Trump. He said, you were convinced and claimed that he was a liberal extremist or whatever, and do you now have more information about that? And Trump was like, oh yeah, we caught him. Yeah, we really caught him. I think he just hears what he wants to hear, you know. He's very good at kind of just sort of being like, shut up, I'll talk about whatever I want.
Is going to say, whether it's a parent or whatever, I'd rather not say right now. They're going to announce it today, sometime later, probably talk about that. But somebody close to him turned and, you know, they said, whoa, it's interesting. We had very good pictures, but not great, not perfect. And when you look at it, what happened is somebody, and this happens a lot. It happened with the crazy Boston bomber. It happened with others. Somebody that's close recognizes even a little tilt of the head, which nobody else would do. And somebody that was very close to him said, That's him. Great job, everybody. And everybody worked together. Pam Bondi is incredible, by the way. People don't know what a star she is. She's incredible. And
why don't you bloody marry her then?
It all worked out.
Could I ask you just some clarification? So a pastor was able to turn him in, and were they...
Pastor.
Archie, even the left is having a hard time. They fired this guy Dowd from MSDNC, who's a terrible guy, terrible human being. But they fired him. I hear they're firing other people. And, you know...
Even the left is like, no shit. Like, most of the left are very anti people getting shot. Okay, I'm sorry that there are some teenagers on the internet doing a funny dance about Charlie Kirk dying. You're going to get that with every national tragedy, everything. Imagine if 9/11 happened now. If 9/11 had happened these days, there'd probably be like a 9/11 TikTok challenge. Like, dark humour has become so ingrained in social media now that it's like, it's just gonna happen, okay? God, when did conservatives become such flipping snowflakes? When did they become so sensitive?
You know, we're talking about radical left. Now, there are a little bit, but radical left networks and cable channels, horrible channels like MS, I always call it DNC because it's, you know, somehow affiliated.
That's clever. MSDNC. That's how he became theapprentice.com.
With the Democrat National Committee. So, you know, it's a little statement you make. But MSNBC, but NBC, ABC, CBS, they're all terrible.
But you don't have like a funny name for all of those. Come on, I want to hear a funny name. Well, look, that's it. You know, there's nothing else to say at this point. I should reiterate, for I think, how many times is that now? Probably the 13th time, that I do not agree with the assassination of anybody. I don't want to see any of you going out there assassinating anyone. You can quote me on that, okay? I think only one person is allowed to judge who lives and who dies. And that person is Jesus, i.e. God. I'm joking. I don't believe that. I just think we should all just sort of like stop killing each other, really. Like in the John Lennon song, Imagine. And look what happened to him. Remember when John Lennon got shot? Do you remember when John Lennon got shot? And he got shot, didn't he? Because MAGA were jealous. Well, thanks for watching the podcast or listening to the podcast. This has been a difficult one to get out. You know, I don't like talking about this kind of stuff. I like talking about cool things, nice things, not assassinations and conspiracies and I'm tired of these ghouls who just hate trans people and just try and spread bullshit about us all the time and try and link us to horrible events. I mean, what's next? What did we do next? Tornado? What did we do next? Trans people's fault that Toys R Us shut down? We can't catch a break. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing. If you become a member or join the Patreon, you will have access to extra special members episodes, as well as a physical zine and some stickers if you want it. You just have to join the Patreon is the best way to get that. Also, if you're watching this right now, I would have uploaded a members episode for this week featuring extra bits from this and a whole other half that is much lighter and much funnier. And that's a whole other episode, completely included in your Patreon or YouTube membership. So consider that. So look, I'll just end by saying, when this type of thing happens, when awful things happen, things that you're not expecting, horrible public, gruesome assassinations or tragic world freak accidents or, you know, natural disasters or whatever. There are always people primed and ready to jump on that thing and make it about something else. There's always people who have been planning, waiting for something like this to happen so they can twist it and distort it in a disturbing way to make you fear or hate someone that you don't know or don't understand. And I have no desire to perpetuate that. I think that is a really, truly scummy thing to do. I think it's way scummier than making a dark, silly joke in gallows humour about, you know, the death of a public figure, which I don't think is a good thing to do for anybody. But I think using a tragedy like this to stir hatred and further division and trying to, you know, seemingly egg on some sort of civil war is actually sort of despicable. So to play you out, I would like to show you a video of Mr. Konstantin Kissin, my favourite from the Trigonometry podcast, doing exactly that, in my opinion, allegedly. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a nice week. And, you know, try not to think about all this too much anymore. Let's move on from here, okay? Here's the grotesque Konstantin Kissin.
For a whole decade now, the complete dehumanization of people for simply having political disagreements. And so when I see that the killer of Charlie Kirk had these so-called anti-fascist inscriptions on his ammunition, I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. Of course this would happen. And people like to pretend that this has no consequence. Well, think about it, Piers. You're a man, I'm a man. If you and I thought that fascism was actually here, as we keep being told, wouldn't it be our duty to stand up and fight? So can we really be...
Yeah, it would be. And I don't trust you or Piers Morgan for a moment to ever do that. I think you two are, you know, public pseudo-intellectuals. I think Konstantin Kissin is a failed comedian who very rarely ever now tries to be funny, seemingly. And I don't think you would do very well even if you wanted to, which you clearly don't want to, because there is a fascism problem right now. But I think Konstantin Kissin likes to maybe imagine himself as a bit of a he-man. Those are his pronouns, he-man. But I think if he did... What I'm saying is, if Konstantin ever does decide that he wants to stand up and help fight fascism, he can go do it over there. Because I'd rather be surrounded by people with a little bit more muscle, actually. I think maybe he could talk them to death.
Surprised then when some deranged guy picks up a rifle and shoots someone who people on the media, people on TV keep saying is a fascist, keep saying is a Nazi, is completely irresponsible. And I'll just make one other point on this, because, you know, we've had this conversation. Lewis has talked about, well, there's violence on the left and violence on the right. He's right. Of course, there are deranged people on both sides. In a country with easy access to firearms, there will be that sort of violence like we've seen in our country. It's not just Joe Cox who's been killed in this country. We also had Sir David Ames, an MP, be killed.
Okay, great. So we can just leave it at that, can we, Konstantin? We've agreed there's horrible political violence on both sides. It can happen to anyone. In fact, there could be centrist violence. There could be centre-left, centre-right violence. There could be anarchist violence. You know, any kind of violence that you can think of. We've probably seen it by now. So I'm great. I'm great. We agree. Oh, no, wait, sorry, he's got something else to say.
In Britain, too. And he was a member of the Conservative Party, killed by an Islamist. And on we go. But there's one thing that I've noticed. A great mentor of mine once told me, he said, Konstantin, the greatest insights come from looking at what is not there.
Who was that who said that? The greatest insights come from looking at what is not there. Okay. Who said that? Mr. Bean?
And the one thing I have noticed that hasn't been there in my mind, you tell me if this is different for you, Piers, over the last few days, I've had no expectation that there would be burning, looting, riots in the streets, attacks on police officers across America or Britain or the rest of the West. We haven't seen any of that, and we haven't expected any of that.
Oh, right, yeah, because, you know, that whole, like, storming the Capitol thing, that was a dream that we all had, was it? That was just a wild, daft dream. Conservatives are so peaceful, aren't they? They're like little bunny rabbits.
And that's because political violence has been normalized on these far extremes of the left. And when you see those people celebrating, what they are expressing is now a widely held opinion, particularly among young people on the woke left, that if they don't agree with somebody, if they're not getting their way politically, they're entitled to use violence to achieve their aims.
Ultimately, this is like when the Conservatives were getting really bent out of shape because people sang Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead when Margaret Thatcher died, while not realising that the effects of Thatcher's reign were devastating for many people and many communities. And I think there's a willful ignorance, or a sort of, I guess, a willful, I'm going to put my fingers in my ears and go la 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 about, you know, how someone like Charlie Kirk impacts minorities and other communities. Because ultimately, you know, the right wing does not care about minorities and other communities. All they care about is themselves. Their whole philosophy is intrinsically self-satisfied, self-preservationist. Greed is good, etc. If you like the 80s so much, why don't you flip and we'll go back there? That's what we need. We need migrant boats that take conservatives back to the 80s. Let's get a scientist working on that.
We took cancel culture away from them when Elon Musk took over X and...
What are you on about, you idiot? We took cancel culture away from them, did we? You took cancel culture away because the man from South Africa, Apartheid Clyde, bought X. Okay.
Opened up the conversation and forced other social media platforms to open up the...
Yeah, Twitter's a real hotbed of civil conversation. This is the thing, right? This is what Charlie Kirk was. Charlie Kirk was essentially the human embodiment of the X platform. Can we agree on that?
The conversation. So now, instead of using cancel culture, we've got violence culture. And everybody has to pull back. And I'm not calling for any kind of censorship, because censorship will not solve this. But the people who have spent the last decade calling their political opponents fascist, Nazis, and so on, they have blood on their hands, and they need to look in the mirror now and stop.
Hold on. Let me find a mirror. There's a mirror just here. One sec. I'm just gonna look in this mirror. Can you see me there? I'm looking in the mirror. I've got blood on my hands. And I'm gonna say it. Konstantin Kisin is a fascist. Well, that's been Lobotomy World. Join me again next week, where I promise we'll be talking about something a little bit nicer. I don't know what yet. Maybe ice cream. Ice cream for everyone. Bye.